The atmosphere in the lounge at Arsenal's training facility in London Colney was incredibly tense, almost like a battlefield during a ceasefire. The entire first-team squad, from Martin Ødegaard to the bench players, gathered in front of a giant TV screen, their eyes completely glued to it. They had just finished a light training session, but their practice jerseys were soaked once again with cold sweat brought on by immense anxiety. Not a single player dared to speak much. There were only heavy sighs and occasional muttered prayers offered in various languages. The fate of the 2025-2026 English Premier League title was no longer in their own hands, but rested entirely on the remaining 5 minutes of stoppage time at the Vitality Stadium, where Bournemouth was shockingly holding Manchester City to a 1-1 draw. Bukayo Saka sat on the floor, leaning against a couch with both hands clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white, while his eyes remained fixed on Doku's movements as he orchestrated Manchester City's final attack. Next to him, Gabriel Magalhaes looked like he couldn't bear to watch the screen anymore. The Brazilian defender covered his face with a towel multiple times, only daring to peek when he heard the roar of the crowd from the TV speakers. Every time Erling Haaland approached the Bournemouth penalty box, the entire room held its breath dramatically, as if they could telekinetically help head the ball out of the box. In another corner, Mikel Arteta stood with his arms crossed, his face hardened like obsidian, showing incredible tension despite his best efforts to maintain his composure in front of his players, who were on the brink of making history. The clock on the TV screen showed 94 minutes and 40 seconds when Manchester City earned a crucial final corner kick. As the ball lofted into the air, the Arsenal lounge fell dead silent, creating an atmosphere so thick that the ticking of the wall clock felt audible. However, instead of being met by a lethal header from the opposition, the Bournemouth goalkeeper bravely flew out to intercept the ball, clutching it tightly to his chest as he dropped to the ground. At that exact second, the referee blew the final whistle 3 times to signal the end of the match. That draw mathematically ensured Manchester City could no longer catch Arsenal at the top of the standings. Instantly, the silence at London Colney shattered into an explosion of absolute euphoria, as if the roof of the training facility might collapse from the sound waves of the players' joy. Declan Rice was the first to jump onto the coffee table, screaming hysterically while pumping his fists in the air before throwing himself into the arms of Aaron Ramsdale and William Saliba. Foreign and domestic players mingled seamlessly, hugging tightly, jumping up and down in a chaotic huddle, and chanting songs of victory they had bottled up for years. Tears of joy began to stream down the cheeks of several veteran players who knew exactly how grueling and bloody their fight had been to break City's dominance over the past few seasons. Martin Ødegaard, the captain who usually always appeared calm and calculated, completely lost control of his emotions this time as he fell to his knees on the carpet, sobbing open-hearted. He was immediately swarmed by Kai Havertz and Ben White, who threw themselves on top of him, creating a pile of bodies laughing and crying at the same time on the lounge floor. For Ødegaard, this trophy was total redemption for all the criticism, doubts, and painful late-season collapses in previous years that had earned their team the label of chokers. Securing the championship in 2026 was not just luck. It was the fruit of consistency, mental maturity, and the unwavering belief he had instilled in the locker room. In the middle of the ongoing madness, Gabriel Martinelli grabbed a bottle of champagne that had somehow been prepared by the club staff, shook it, and sprayed it everywhere, soaking his teammates who were still busy dancing. Oleksandr Zinchenko climbed onto a chair while waving the club flag, leading the chants of Arsenal's glory usually sung by reporters and die-hard fans at the Emirates Stadium. Loud hip-hop music blasted through the locker room speakers, blending with laughter, shouts, and the clinking of bottles as a spontaneous celebration. There was no longer any barrier between the superstars and the academy players. That afternoon, they were all a band of heroes who had finally ended a league title drought that had lasted more than 2 decades. Mikel Arteta, who had been watching from the sidelines, could no longer hold back a wide smile, a rare sight on his usually intense face. The manager slowly walked toward the crowd of players, and before he could say a single word, Rice and Saka ambushed him from behind and hoisted him into the air. Arteta laughed out loud, hugging his players one by one with bursting pride, realizing that the long-term project he built with tears and sharp criticism had finally reached its most beautiful peak. He looked into his players' eyes and knew that starting today, the mentality of this club had changed forever, from contenders to true champions. Meanwhile, the players' cell phones began to buzz non-stop, flooded with thousands of congratulatory notifications from family, agents, legendary former Arsenal players, and fans on social media who were exploding with joy. Bukayo Saka opened a video message showing the streets around North London completely gridlocked, packed with a sea of people in red jerseys lighting flares and singing together. Seeing the footage, Saka immediately showed his phone screen to his teammates, triggering a new wave of cheers that was just as loud as before. They realized that tonight, the entire city of London wouldn't sleep, and they couldn't wait to get back and party with millions of Gunners who had faithfully waited for this magical moment. The celebration then shifted out to the practice field, where the players brought out makeshift banners and a replica trophy to pose for photos together under the warm London evening sun. William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes struck funny poses for the camera, while Thomas Partey and Jorginho Ho chatted casually in the corner of the field, enjoying a moment of peace amidst the storm of euphoria still raging around them. The exhaustion from a grueling schedule and months of draining mental pressure seemed to evaporate, replaced by immense satisfaction because their monumental task had been completed in the best possible way. They looked at each other with deep respect, knowing that the bond formed between them this season would live forever as a legendary squad. As night fell, and the locker room began to quiet down a bit though the joy remained thick, the players gathered in one final circle before being allowed to head home. Martin Ødegaard stood in the center, holding a drink, and gave a brief, emotional speech about how they had grown from a group of talented young players into an unstoppable family. Thunderous applause concluded the captain's speech, marking the end of the most historic day in the soccer careers of most of them. Arsenal was officially the new king of English soccer in 2026, and that certainty was born from a nerve-wracking afternoon in Bournemouth, which they would always remember as the dawn of a new era of glory for the Gunners.